We've had people from those jurisdictions here providing the training. It enables us to bring together a range of emergency operators from places like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Indonesia and all across Australia, a lot of jurisdictions from across Australia, to focus on sharing knowledge and ensuring that we have the best possible response to emergencies in our ports. Increasingly important, we are a trading nation. Australia derives its income, its revenue from trading with the world, and we need to ensure that we are able to respond to emergencies right across the nation in our ports and to ensure that we keep our sea lines of communication open. Trying to think about what other things we might get the Commissioner to talk about the type of training that's been conducted, but what this does is ensure that our capabilities are world-class and that we assist our regional neighbours to keep their capabilities at the top possible level. The training's been conducted on board HMAS Sterling, at Fremantle, in Henderson and at Jandakot, bringing together our naval colleagues with our civil response, which is kind of handy in advance of our increasing presence of AUKUS-related activities, which we building from 2027 when we get more American and British presence here. I might just hand over to the Commissioner and then these guys can tell you what they've actually been doing.
Thanks, Minister. So this is a fantastic opportunity for the Department of Fire and Emergency Services personnel to continue to develop our ship firefighting capability ahead of the AUKUS initiatives as the Minister's spoken about. Importantly, we've also got Fire and Emergency Services personnel from New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania and South Australia, who also had the opportunity on the invite from DFES to be a part of this training delivered through Global Port Safety and the European Union and France. And we thank them for their commitment to hold this ship firefighting course here in Western Australia. And that's a really important thing, incredibly isolated Western Australia and Perth in particular. And so it is really important for our personnel that we get the opportunity to interface with first responders from other parts of the world. We saw at the AFAC conference in late August, we had over 4,000 delegates here from around the world and Australia, New Zealand, and this is a really good feed off the back of that to continue the opportunity for our people to interface with these other first responders to look at how they do things differently in their ports, in their particular countries. So we thank everybody, Royal Australian Navy, of course, for their support with the work at Sterling, Fremantle Ports for the use of the port. I know just on Wednesday they did a really extensive exercise on a container ship in Fremantle Port, and that is no small undertaking for the commitment to be able to do that and the organising around it. So we thank them, Fremantle Ports, for their work, and of course Henderson as well for the involvement of everybody there. As we come to the end of the 2-week exercise and training opportunity, thanks to everybody that's been involved, and I know that those people that attended from around the world and from around Australia are going to benefit significantly, as are the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, but other fire and emergency services agencies around Australia. Thank you.
So you want Olivia and Daniel, do you want to take some questions or you want to say anything? Yeah, come and stand there and you can just tell them what you've been doing.
Step forward again.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have some questions, so excuse me for my English before.
Over the 2 weeks, can you tell us some of the activities and things that you did?
So we are going to, we try to teach a specific organization about the emergency response on ships. The organization, when we arrive on the intervention, how we can make support areas on the quay, and after how we are going to make some, to recognize in the ship, to find the fire, and to find victims if the case, and all of this in the safety. The most important, to not just to try to extinguish the the fire, but do it with the safety in safety position. That's what we do in these 2 weeks of training, and it was very interesting because the different country come with their skills, their different skills. They come with their experience. Some of countries as living a lot of fire in different situations, more than us in Europe, for example. And the most interesting is the meeting of human people come from different countries, different states of Australia, and that's what we live together in these 2 weeks.
Given the risks to international trade on ships, I mean, how important is the international cooperation? Because obviously the ships aren't staying at one country, they're obviously moving between borders, different jurisdictions. So how important is the consistency between all the various nations?
Yes, I'm not sure I understand all of the question, but the risk, because it was ships, it's all over the world. And so we know that in the north of Australia and Asia, we have a big road for the ships. And so the risk is the same for everybody in the world. And the traffic grow up. And so if the traffic grow up, we got more risk for everybody, and that's why we have to grow up our skills to excuse me. It's necessary that we can fight about these events. I can say this, excuse me. That is necessary that we work together, that we can help together if the intervention, the risk grow up and can be big. For example, if we have an event in Malaysia, we can maybe have the help of Indonesia, for example. They can help together, and if they have the same organization, the same skills, the same techniques, it can be easily for them.
And Daniel, perhaps how different is it? How different is it to suppress fire on a ship, particularly where the cargo, I imagine, often presents a threat?
Yes, and I think for us as a fire service in New South Wales, in Australia, we're very keen to obviously reflect best practice, particularly in ship firefighting. So what we see in that environment is that fires on ships can be extremely dangerous, very confined, very hot, and as you mentioned, lots of different cargoes as well. And we're seeing a lot of things that we're not used to seeing come through cargo now, in particular things like electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and they can present particular hazards when they're involved in fire.
The drills that were carried out, would it be the same on a submarine?
Look, I'm not sure about a submarine, but I think overall, I think a lot of it is very confined, very difficult access, a lot of trapped heat, trapped smoke, which makes it quite dangerous for the ship's crew and also for firefighters. So a lot of this training was about how we get in there safely and how we get out safely.
What would you say the main differences between the way you fight fires in Australia compared to the firefighters in Europe that you've been working with over the last 2 weeks?
Look, I think specifically relevant to ships, these guys sort of bring best practice. Thankfully, these are very low likelihood events, so we don't get a lot of experience.
What this is preparing.
Yeah, certainly the Westralia, as the Minister has mentioned, was a significant fire, and the points made around the challenges of heat and smoke in confined spaces. I don't think we can't overestimate the difficulties that presents for responding crews. There are complexities with ships, depending on the question around if it's out at sea, is it tied up at the port, is it inside the port and not tied up. They present legal issues for us around who's actually in control of the event when it happens. Is it the Feds Commissioner? Is it the Harbour Master? If it's a Navy vessel, is it the Navy? And those are the sorts of things that we're working through now as we prepare for AUKUS. But we've had ship fires here in Fremantle Port where we've had to work through those particular issues, and any opportunity we can take, as we've done with this 2 weeks, to expand the experience and knowledge of our people, as we're going to take those, and that includes, if we get the opportunity to send people overseas to do further courses to make sure that we're continually improving our response capability for ship fires.
And because, just to clarify, so there was Navy involvement in these exercises
yes,
as well?
Yeah.
And so there's currently no clear division between who would be responsible for ship fires off HMAS Sterling, or?
Oh no, it's not a matter of it being unclear. I'm just saying it's complex. Yeah. So there are there's a whole myriad of different circumstances and contexts that fires can happen in, as it currently sits, there's a fire service on Sterling base that operates and deals with fires that happen there. But as the risk profile grows, the Department of Fire and Emergency Services is going to need to expand its capabilities to make sure that we're providing the adequate support to Sterling that it needs. Yeah.
The reason for this training, is it because of AUKUS, or is it something that happens yearly?
No, it hasn't happened here before, and I think AUKUS is one of the attractions to have it here, and we're really thankful for the opportunity to be able to put our people on it and be a part of it and deliver it. So you can't. The point was made around the value of getting those first responders in a room for 2 weeks and talking through these things. And these, we know that firefighters, that is the context that they operate best in terms of their learning, is to get that opportunity to share different ways of doing business.
And how important is it that our Aussie firefighters develop their skills and improve their experience with AUKUS kind of ramping up?
It's absolutely critical to our support to AUKUS, and we see ourselves as a really strong supporter to make sure that we're providing the level of service that AUKUS is going to need to make sure that it's operating safely. What we've seen in fire and emergency services sector over time is a consistent breaking down of borders and barriers in terms of that sharing of knowledge and understanding. You would all be aware, the lengths that we go to deploy our first responders around the world. Only this year we've had firefighters up in Canada helping them with bushfires, and we know that we send SES and firefighters to the eastern states on a regular basis, and we receive them back here. And that continuing, particularly here in Western Australia where we're so isolated, you can't underestimate the value of that.
And so has had an indication from the WA government that there'll be an increase in funding to allow for that increased capacity that's required.
Yep.
So look, I just want to make a reflection on talking about the Navy and this particular activity. First of all, this activity, the Global Port Safety Initiative, is European-backed, French-led. It began last year, and it's €6 million over 4 years. So it's an ongoing program, and it's focused on building resilience across Asia for supporting shipping between and trade connections between Asia and Europe. So that is not necessarily directly related to AUKUS or anything of that nature. With respect to fighting fires on board ships, the experts and the people who constantly practice and train for that are the Navy and Merchant Marine. So the people on board, the crews, the professionals who operate ships in the Navy or Merchant Marine ships, They practice, they are trained to fight fires, and they practice that on a regular basis. What you don't necessarily get is that experience in our civilian firefighting capability. So the opportunity to familiarise themselves with the environment, learn about how you fight fires in those confined spaces, and onboard a platform that's carrying potentially a lot of hazardous material, that is invaluable. There are things that are associated with shipping and fires that you don't necessarily confront anywhere else. So there's a thing called a fuel-air explosion that can occur, be generated in a dust environment. So our ships that embark, grain and potentially even just other minerals, potentially have an environment where something that's not necessarily flammable normally can be up in the air and result in an explosion like you saw in Beirut, where there's huge explosion that you wouldn't encounter anywhere else. So those are sorts of things, the threats and hazards that they have to confront in a maritime environment that they need to learn about. And so it's valuable that they do these exercises.
Minister, I appreciate this isn't an announcement about AUKUS, of course, but is there an expectation that the WA government will be putting money towards increased capabilities to support that?
Yeah, so more likely the Commonwealth will contribute to boosting our capability in the event that it's required. So right now, we have working groups, state Commonwealth working groups focused on boosting our capabilities, if necessary, to confront any additional challenges associated with AUKUS. There isn't really anything new, other than increased presence on a more permanent basis. So for decades now, nuclear vessels, nuclear-powered warships and submarines have been visiting Western Australia. We're used to it in Western Australia. Every time there is a visit by a nuclear-powered submarine or warship, we have a plan under our Emergency Management Act that we enact, and it's stood up and it brings together all the relevant agencies at state level and Commonwealth. So we get, nuclear specialists come over from the East Coast and they establish a capability for the duration of that visit. What we're going to do now is step from that to a permanent presence for monitoring and response capability. The Emergency Management Committee is chaired by retired Brigadier Brett Challoner. They right now are considering how we go about stepping up our plan that we enacted for a short period of time into a permanent presence.
The Commissioner did reference, as the risk profile grows.
Yeah.
So how does
I think he's just referring to more presence, rather. It's not...
Yeah, and so how does the increased presence from when the sub-rotational force is permanent in 2027, how does that increase Perth's risk?
Not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily, the nature of the risk doesn't change. Obviously, a nuclear-powered submarine or ship has already been here, and that's all you're going to have is permanent presence. What the role of the state emergency services is in responding to an incident in a nuclear-powered warship is to augment and support the Commonwealth agencies, the Navy, and they have some contracted providers on board HMAS Sterling. Our role will be to back them up and support them after the initial response is them. And the initial response is actually the crew of the vessel.
You say the nature of the threat doesn't change, but
No.
the scope does, doesn't it? Because there'll be more assets here that could be a target.
A target, what do you mean by that?
An international target or a terrorist
target?
target?
Mostly the concern or the plans for responding to any requirement for us to provide additional support is related to fires, floods, the sort of things that ships and submarines confront on a normal basis.
Yes, but surely AUKUS has changed and increased the threat assessment of HMAS Sterling and
Mostly it's to do with the intelligence threat. So it's actually adversaries or other states seeking to gather intelligence on it. So you would have seen the ASIO chief has identified that the activity around intelligence gathering activity by foreign actors has lifted and is perceived and has been identified as a growing threat. So it's more about their likelihood of intelligence gathering activities, potentially trying to compromise people or systems and gather intelligence on what's happening with AUKUS.
So the anti-nuclear arguments going around that, you know, Perth becomes a terrorist target, you don't buy that?
Well, no one's immune from being a terrorist target, and we haven't been for a long time. In fact, only a couple of months ago, we were under attack by Iran, inside Australia. We were attacked by a foreign state. They did it via proxies, but it happened on our soil. So the suggestion that suddenly we're being exposed to an additional threat is kind of naive.
What would you say to polling, recent polling from the United States Studies Centre that shows that 1/3 of Australians questioned believe that AUKUS has increased the threat level to Western Australia?
I don't know about that, but what I do know is that there is majority support for Australia acquiring nuclear-powered submarines in our interests for defence of the nation. That was true when AUKUS was first announced. In the order of 70% of Australians believed that that was a good thing and that they supported it. I don't think that level of support has diminished much. It's gone down to in the high 60s. In Western Australia, the last time I saw from the Lowy Institute confirmed that in Western Australia it was 70%. Western Australians support defence of the nations. Western Australians support initiatives that generate jobs and opportunity for Western Australians, and this certainly does that.
And how closely is the Western Australian government watching events in the United States next week? Are you expecting any significant change to come out about on the AUKUS deal as a result of those measures?
Look, I'm pretty confident that the result of Bridge Colby's review will be that America will determine it's in their interest to continue with AUKUS, and they'll do what the UK and Australia did before them and commit to it again after the review is completed.
How much have we spent so far on the AUKUS plan?
You'd have to ask the Commonwealth, but
From WA, sorry, back to the state government.
on AUKUS.
Or preparing for.
I know what we've done, mostly what we've done is advocacy and working with the Commonwealth and Defence, Department of Defence on advocating for greater presence and capability here and working on delivering on, in particular, on things like the Defence Precinct at Henderson and what the state needs to do to assist with that. But ultimately, the funding and the spend on that activity is the Commonwealth. I mean, at state level, way back in when the Defence Strategic Review was underway, we made a submission to the Commonwealth, to the Defence Strategic Review on behalf of the state. We then, post that, we made another submission to the Commonwealth about acquiring nuclear-powered submarine capability. Our submission, our proposal, looks a lot like the optimal pathway they ended up arriving at. So we made a proposal about 8 months before they decided on what the optimal pathway looks like. We made a submission to the Commonwealth that suggested they do a lot of very similar things, like inviting our allies to forward operate submarines from here, embarking Australians to build their capability to operate submarines, and enabling our industry to build our capability to sustain and maintain submarines. And then we suggested that they might lease or buy a Los Angeles class submarine. In the end, they determined they're going to buy a Virginia class. That's good. But otherwise, pretty much everything that we suggested 8 months before they decided to do it was what they're doing now.
Given the WA government's support for the AUKUS deal, how disappointing will it be if that US Defence Department snap review results in changes?
Oh yeah, it might involve changes. I actually expect. Okay, so this is a prediction that you'll hold me to if, in the event that's. I expect the United States will determine that AUKUS is good, and the new administration may decide to make AUKUS great again.
There was another e-scooter fatality in Perth last night.
Another, sorry?
E-scooter fatality.
Oh, right. Yeah.
55-year-old man died in Warwick. Are we doing enough to improve the safety of e-scooters and the regulation of them in WA?
Oh, look, not my portfolio, but what the observation I'd make is there are already laws and regulations governing use of e-scooters and e-rideables, and people should comply with them. There's potentially a dangerous activity.
How much is the heavy security surrounding the David Pye trial this week costing taxpayers?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that. It is significant. I think it's undeniably necessary. You're talking about a dangerous individual, threatened by dangerous individuals in a challenging environment. We want this court case to proceed unimpeded, and whatever the police need to do to ensure the safety of the community, they should do.
What significant are we talking? Millions?
I don't know.
Hundreds of thousands?
I don't know. I'm not the police minister.
I mean, you're the corrective services minister.
Yeah, I am, but this has been the security around that particular case is being driven rightly by police, because it's a broader thing than just the individual who's subject to corrective services management.
Did it shock you? It's probably shocked neighbours to see him out roaming the streets under escort?
Look, it's before the courts. I'm really sensitive to not wanting to compromise this case. Making any observation about the nature of the case.
I'm not making an observation about the nature of the case.
I appreciate you'd like to.
Standing in his driveway. Do you think that would shock people?
I appreciate you'd like me to comment on it. I'm not going to, because I do not want to be the one responsible for compromising the case.
Is it a risk to him, or is it a risk to the public?
The police, the Commissioner of Police and his team analysed the risk both to an individual and to the public, and they've taken appropriate measures, and I commend them for that.
Question from my colleague Connor. Michael Radamiller-Jack is a repeat domestic violence perpetrator and accused of raping women in regional WA. Why is he allowed out on bail when you said GPS monitoring would be mandatory for repeat and high-risk offenders?
Here's the thing. The legislation to which you refer requires, in the first instance, for the courts to determine whether it is safe to release an individual on bail, and then in the event that they determine that, there are a range of measures that may be applied, including electronic monitoring. But the first decision is the courts, and it's whether or not it is safe to release an individual. I think most Western Australians would assume that if an individual is not safe to be released to the community, they wouldn't be.
Just on our health system, there was obviously the North, the East, South Metro Hospitals have released all their data. The opposition has collated some of that. One of the points in particular was that 000 calls have fallen below the 90% target. They're sitting at 83. Can I just get your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that?
You're in a whole new portfolio from mine, and I don't know, intricate detail of what you're talking about, I'm not really familiar with.
How concerned are you with just how stretched our frontline services are? How can West Australians even feel safe or confident when they're not being?
I think Western Australia has a world-class emergency response capability right across our emergency services, and I think Western Australians recognise that. There's no concern with regard to the quality of our emergency response.
Just back to my DV question, police have advised the woman to move over east to keep safe. Is that appropriate?
Look, all I would say with regard to that matter, it is shocking. I've seen the report to which you refer. It's shocking and offensive, but ultimately it comes down to, with respect to this legislation, it comes down to what I said before. What the legislation does is expect that the courts will determine in the first instance whether or not it's safe to release an individual on bail. In the event that they believe it is, they can apply a range of measures, one of which now, an additional one of which, is electronic monitoring. It is not the sole condition available, and regardless of whether that condition or any other is applied to an individual, the first decision is to whether or not it's safe to release that person into the community, and that's a court's responsibility.
But telling the woman to go over east?
I've said I think Western Australians would expect that in this particular case they might look at it and they would expect that that person wouldn't have been given bail.
Why are the findings of the report into Robert McCulloch's escape from court custody being kept secret?
Look, I'm not sure whether anything's been kept secret, but I think with regard to that, that's been subject to an inquiry. You know, the inappropriate release or the incorrect release of that individual has been subject to an inquiry. There were failures identified, and actions have been implemented to mitigate against it reoccurring. And
so why not make
that's what's happened. It's actually operational, Jessica. It's not like a policy-related matter. But the operational inquiry has been conducted. They've identified failures. You know, clearly there were failures. They've taken measures to try and mitigate against it reoccurring.
But shouldn't we know what measures have been put in place?
No, because it's operational, and you're talking about down into specific, responses to an individual type of situation. And there's many different types of situations that they have operational responses for. They're operational in nature. They're for the operators, and you can understand that maybe in many cases you don't want to reveal all of your measures aimed at preventing people from doing the wrong thing. People who are, by definition, likely to do the wrong thing or looking potentially to do the wrong thing. So you don't necessarily want to convey all of your measures publicly. So I can understand that.
But shouldn't the public know whether whoever did not follow proper procedures according to the report has been disciplined?
So I understand that action has been taken to address those failures.
Has action been taken, like disciplinary action been taken against the staff?
It is an operational matter. I do understand that action has been taken to address the failures, and measures have been put in place to prevent it from occurring again.
Did that action mean that someone lost their job over the bundle?
I don't know.
Your response to the inquiries reporting to the gun laws yesterday, it got pretty fired up in question time again. I know you appear pretty frustrated by the opposition over it, and whether they are still campaigning against the new Firearms Act that you implemented. Just what's your response?
I think the bottom line from the inquiry, which was initiated in the upper house with support of the entire Parliament, the upper house and government and opposition. Bottom line is the inquiry found that the laws are justified and reasonable.
It did confirm problems with the rollout, though, which Reece Whitby has apologised for the inconvenience to law-abiding gun owners. Do you need to apologise to them? I
would take the lead on that matter from Ariel Bambara, who said a little bit of inconvenience for the privilege of owning a firearm should not come ahead of community safety, and I agree with her.
Were mistakes made by you in the rollout, though? Do you regret the lack of information and communication?
I wasn't the minister during the rollout, so the rollout occurred. The law came into effect.
You were a large part of putting the regulations together.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the law. The regulations, as you'll see from the findings in the inquiry, is that it was reasonable and justified.
The legislation.
And the regulations.
Were described as complex.
Yeah, they're complex because it's a rewrite for the first time in 50 years of a huge act, taking it from the equivalent of horse and cart to the internal combustion engine. We went from paper-driven procedures and administration to digital. It is all being done by necessity over the length of a year because up until now, everyone had to renew their licence annually. Now they've got an opportunity to do it every 5 years, and once they've got through this process of going digital individually, they'll only have to do it every 5 years, and it will be far less complex because once you've gone to the system, you're on the system. Let's remember, right now, they're about halfway through. On the 1st of October, I understand it, some 24,000 people have gone right through this system. So they're already transitioned to the new laws. The new laws came into effect on the 1st of April. So it's not like it's about to happen or it's going to happen, it has happened. And 24,000 people have complied with the new laws. They've managed to get their health checks. They've complied with all their other obligations and they're transitioned into the new system. Another 23,000 or thereabouts, more than 20,000 others are in the process. In about 5 months' time, everyone who currently holds a firearms licence, who is eligible and able to comply with the law, will have transitioned, and this will be a nothing.
Minister, the standing committee did actually find that the legislation which you helped draft violates important principles of natural justice within the Western legal system, including the right, removing the right to silence, removing the presumption of innocence. How would you defend this legislation against criticism that it is an overreach?
It's not my portfolio, but I would point out to you it didn't end with that statement. It said, however, this is justified in the interests of public safety. Got to remember the overarching principle of the legislation. It's in Clause 3 of the Act, the other two being administrative, the first two. Clause 3 of the Act mirrors the National Firearms Agreement. John Howard's National Firearms Agreement recognised that the ownership and use of firearms in Australia is a privilege, and that privilege is subject to the provision of public safety. And that is mirrored in the Act. That is the overarching principle. It's different from the previous Act because that was not the case under the previous laws. Those laws were lax. Those laws were weak. Those laws enabled ownership of firearms by bikies, by criminals, by family and domestic violence offenders, and by people like sovereign citizens.
Do you have any initial comments about the operations that were taking place this week?
Well, I am extremely pleased that Western Australia was ready to host us and contribute to this very, very important training program. The whole program is called GPS, as you know, Global Port Safety, and it aims at enhancing security and safety of the maritime transports, therefore ensuring security and safety both for people but also for the environment, because this is a kind of trading which would allow the operators to mitigate effect also of potential incidents which might affect the environment as well. So on the two sides is very good. So securing the supply chain and reducing potential harmful effects of incidents on the nature and the environment.
Is the geopolitical climate currently in 2025 also a major factor in the need to secure those supply chains? Like, how would you characterise it after?
This is a technical training enhancing the capacity of the operators to reduce the harmful effects of incidents.
How critical is Perth in that global, as a location in that global supply chain in protecting Perth ports?
Well, I would extend it. I mean, the Australian ports and the Western Australian ports are really very, very important. It's not just Fremantle, Perth, going up Port Hedland. I mean, it's obvious that the supply chain, which are at the very heart of the wealth of Western Australia and Australia, are at the port, our transport, maritime transport. So for the EU, this is paramount, but also for the world, it's paramount, because we have to secure that the maritime routes are safe, and that the Indo-Pacific remains safe while being as well open and free. To answer your question.
Yes, thank you. I got that.
Is it our iron ore that is critical to the EU's interests in the Indo-Pacific region, or is there also a concern around critical minerals as well?
Much more than that. I mean, the 40% of the global trade going to the EU comes and passes through the Indo-Pacific. So it's much wider than that. It affects the global wealth of the EU, but also the global wealth of the Indo-Pacific region.
I'm going to try and extrapolate just a little bit further in just with the importance of securing supply chains. You know, recently we have seen just trade be a target, you know, by the Houthis, for example. I mean, therefore, you know, the iron ore wealth, the critical minerals, protecting all of that is more important nowadays, isn't it? Because it has been, material wealth has been a target in international tensions.
Trade is key, and the liberal democracies, the Western democracies who believe in the benefit of free trade are teaming up and are strengthening their ties so that we rely on free trade and the wealth that free trade can give to everybody.
Any plans for next year's training session where that'll be held?
That's to be seen, but we are having the second leg being planned, and the funds are already allocated.
I think we should elevate you to the UN. That was very good.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Said by you, it's great. Now, if you allow me on this, GPS is part of a major development and connectivity policy that the EU has, which is called Global Gateway. It is the biggest financing provided by public authorities in terms of development and connectivity. It sums up to 300 billion euros, and it's really the arm of the EU in terms of development and connectivity. And it has to be undertaken hands in hands with our partners to the benefit of everybody and the beneficiaries of our know-how and wealth.
When